December 1st to kick off the month.
Yeah.
How about 100 years of Boston Bruins hockey? The Canadiens come to town celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Bruins' first game ever against the Montreal Maroons. A 2-1 win for the Bruins, by the way, in that game 100 years ago. Brick, we had such a great time last year with the Centennial season, seeing all these legends walk through the door, recognizing all of these eras of Boston Bruins hockey and how it has contributed to what we have today and the organization that we see before us. But to celebrate the 100 years, to be here, to be present, to be alive, to celebrate that, and take that a step further, selfishly for you and I to be a part of the broadcast to celebrate it. What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, Adam, when I first was being educated on what NESN and the Bruins were going to do for the Centennial season, my immediate assumption was that when the year ended a year ago, whenever it ended, in the regular season, end of the playoffs, however deep the Bruins went, that was the end of the Centennial season, and the great NESN Bruins historian Steve Garabedian said, no, it goes all the way to December 1st. That's the actual 100 years, and the Bruins are going to play the Canadiens. I'm like, oh, awesome. We get to celebrate another 3 months of hockey season before we actually conclude the Centennial season. So I think it's pretty cool. But anytime Bruins Canadiens get together, whether you think the rivalry still exists, it still exists in my mind, my heart. And it's changed, obviously. We've seen different generations of Bruins teams. Obviously, the 88 team, first time in forever, winning in the postseason. I think back to 70 and 72 when I was 8 and 10, and the Bruins were winning the Cups with that absolute gang of a wagon of talented, tough teams led by Bobby and Phil. Neither year did they go through the Canadiens to win those Stanley Cups, as everyone's well aware, and all the heartache and everything that I experienced as this whole New England experience. If you were huge Bruins fans, losing to the Canadiens when the Bruins had great teams, but as much as I hated the Montreal Canadiens, I had so much respect for them because I appreciate quality hockey, and they had great players. You had to admire them. As much as they beat you, as much as they tormented you, the games were great. The talent was awesome to see. It was always must-watch hockey. You loved that they played as many times as they did. You loved that you had to play down out of the division. I'm going beyond the original six, beyond 1967. So, so for it to be Boston-Montreal Centennial game to wrap up what's been a spectacular celebration of Bruins history, and to be part of it on the broadcast side, spectacular. To be a small piece of it in terms of on the player side, I had my experience playing against the Canadiens as a Bruin. My first year in Boston, we lost in round 2 to the Montreal Canadiens. That killed me. I can't believe you. I think I was on the ice for the clinching, the series clinching goal by. Well, Bobby Smith was out there, not one of my favorite players. I remember him trying to deal with him. He was a hard guy to cover. So that hurt. I got a first-hand taste of what it was to lose to the Canadiens in the playoffs as a player. But then, even despite all my injuries over the next several years and not really being active enough to thoroughly enjoy beating the Canadiens, we beat them 3 more years out of those, three in a row, right? Yep. Starting after 88. So, to be around for that, so after the great success in 88, and then losing my first year in Boston, then beating them the next 3 years, that's pretty satisfying.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, what a great perspective to have, to experience, being a part of the Bruins-Canadiens rivalry as a player, being a part of it as a fan first. And as a fan first. Right. I was just going to say that. You're right. Yeah, as a fan first. That is a really unique and special perspective. So that's pretty cool. And I think back, of obviously 2011, being down 2-0 in that series and coming back and winning in 7 games over the Montreal Canadiens, and and you being in the broadcast booth for that. Is just incredible. But to go back to the Centennial season for a moment, because again, we spent a season celebrating it, and this is the 1-year anniversary, but it all goes back to all those great Bruins teams and all those great Bruins players and those eras of Bruins hockey, and to see all of those individuals walk through the door. And if you go back to the beginnings, right, where you have all of the family members of the great players in Bruins history, being honored at centered ice, and then as time went on, you have some of the players that are still with us, fortunately, to be back in the building and to be honored by the fans. And I think that's, what I want to pay tribute to right now is the fact that the fans are, they get it. We just get it here, man. We do, and to hear the ovation, for players who are around well before any of these fans were born, because the fans appreciate the history of this town, you do, right? Like I do. We appreciate the players and teams that came before us, because it helps contribute to what we see on the ice today. It's very special.
Yeah, and a couple of thoughts on that, Adam. More Stanley Cups, they've won their share of cups, but nowhere near the number of cups you felt like was within reach. Yeah. Just about every year in the decade of the 70s, right? Mm-hmm. With the two iterations of what the Bruins were all about, the Laura Espo generation and then the Don Cherry generation, which was a totally different approach to how they were going to win. And, even in the years that we've been working together and covering the Bruins, starting in 11, but 13 and 19, and, just different seasons, years when they were President's Trophy teams and should have had deep playoff run, whatever it might have been, you wish there was more Stanley Cup. So that being said, not a negative, just an observation and a dream, a wishful could have, that would have been even more awesome. And more to celebrate. The other thing is, of all the players that I was fortunate enough to come across, meet, spend time with that were legends within this organization, I have to give a shout out to Milt Schmidt. Mm-hmm. I wasn't around to watch and appreciate him as a player, other than the highlights that we're able to show that exist about Milt Schmidt, and then to read about the legendary player and his line and his service to his country at a time when you were right in the prime of your career, etc. And then to have met him later in life when I was playing for the Bruins, but more importantly when I was part of the alumni and the alumni hockey team, and Milt was still around and still vibrant and strong and sharp, very, very intelligent, and the history of what he meant to this organization, as a player and as an executive. And the trade really that turned this franchise around in the 70s. But the man himself was just, and he had the best phrase ever, once a Bruin, always a Bruin. You play one game as a Bruin, you're an alumni. And that speaks to everybody that's ever put that jersey on and had that be on the crest and the name on the back and skated in the Garden or the TD Garden or whatever your history is. It was phenomenal. And I'll take that with me the rest of my life, the impact that he had and the association that we have with the Bruins, and to know that there was people like that were pioneers as far as, what the Bruins organization is and has always been about.
Yeah, well said. And by the way, our next episode will be episode 15. It'll be the Milt Schmidt episode, so there you go.
Nice.